This is a test of the City of Palaca audio system.
Sounds good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and call to order the Historic Preservation Board Workshop of June 27th, 2024. Let's start, if we could, Madam City Clerk, with reading of the notice of our special.
Thank you. To members Alan Sheffield, Larry Beaton, Christopher Hollister, Brianna Pierce, Patty Vogt, Timothy Jefferson, and alternate Mary Jane Rosa. You are notified that a special called workshop of the Historic Preservation Board is hereby called to commence on June 27, 2024 at City Hall, located at 201 North Second Street, Palaca, Florida 32177. The workshop is called to commence at 3 o'clock. The purpose of the workshop is to cover educational topics to include expanded roles at the Historic Preservation Board. Govern yourselves accordingly. Elizabeth Van Rensburg, Chair, and Lorenzo Agembo, Planning Director.
Thank you very much. I see Chaplain Mulberry is with us today. Thank you very much, sir. If you could lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, led by Patty Vogt.
Good evening, everyone. Father, again, we thank you for this opportunity to come together. We thank you for this board. We thank you for every member. We thank you for the wisdom, God, that you will grant unto your people, that we may guide this city in a good direction. We pray, Lord, that your hand will be upon us and bless us. Keep us, Lord, I pray, for such a time as this. We give you glory and honor for all that you do for us. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, if we could have the roll call, please.
Certainly. Brianna Pierce? Present. Mr. Hollister is not present for the record. Larry Beaton is excused for the record. Ms. Vogt? Present. Mr. Jefferson?
Present.
Mr. Sheffield is not present for the record. I believe he was having some card difficulties or would otherwise, he had planned to be here, but that
Yes.
nature had other plans. So I'm gonna mark him excused since it wasn't of his nature, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Mary Jane Rosa is absent for the record. Chair Van Rensburg.
Present.
Thank you so much. You have a quorum, although it's a workshop.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to public comments. As we know, public comments are limited to 3 minutes and we do not take action on items. Opening public comments? We got a shake of the head, so we will close those again and move on to discussion. I'd like to begin by saying thank you all for attending. Our meetings have, possibly because of the nature of what we do, run a lot later recently than we might have liked for them to, and a lot of things have kind of gotten kicked down the road, so to speak. So I thought it was important for us to get together today to address some things that we have not been able to address. And also because so many of us are fairly new to the board, I felt that it would be a great time for us to have some refresher information and some educational material presented to us. So before we start with discussion item A, which is discussion the mission of the Historic Preservation Board, I actually asked for this to be put on the agenda today because I'm sensing that more and more we are being faced with difficult decisions. And I have heard applicants say things along the lines of, well, I thought they might have been more reasonable about that. And I thought it was important to us to know indeed what our mission is as a historic preservation board. And perhaps we might even like to have our mission put at the top of our agenda to be read to everyone in attendance and all those out in Zoom land. I know there's a huge crowd out there, so that people can know what our mission is and
Showing you section 54-76 of the Historic Preservation Board. This section of the code is what's always provided to the city commission when they are tasked with appointing a new member to the board. Section 54-76 states that first establishes the board. There's hereby created a Historic Preservation Board of the city. But other than it being established, the next paragraph is the purpose of the board. The purpose is for the responsibility for carrying out the aims of the article and for preserving and enhancing the character of historic districts and sites is hereby vested in the Historic Preservation Board.
So I'm going to just interject here because this is different from your regular meetings. This is your workshop that you have called. It is incumbent upon you to workshop. You can certainly lean on staff for guidance, but this is your opportunity to discuss. If the mission that is codified in the code is not meeting your objectives, then you need to voice that so we can circle back to capture your intent, but this is your time.
Okay, point well taken, and thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was operating under the assumption that there was something kind of in a nutshell.
There's the code. There is the code, and I have circulated this information back in the fall in terms of what the Historic Preservation Board is capable of doing. You have a long list of objectives. I believe that was provided back then. We can certainly circle back around to that. Sunny, I think it was just a cut and paste right out of the code.
So when in doubt, the code governs the board.
I guess the better question is what is it that you would like to discuss as part of the mission? What is the purpose?
I'd like to ask some stuff. My problem, I shouldn't say problem, my
Challenge, go with
yes,
challenge.
my challenge, thank you, better word, is that I find that the codes for the city don't always work with what I see or would hope to be the historic neighborhoods and how we can get the codes or ordinances or whatever the correct terminology is. So, can I make it, for instance,
Absolutely.
like the metal garages? I don't see those, being in a historic district. There are certain things that visually and experience wise in other historic neighborhoods in other cities and states, and I've been to a lot of them. I see that it's a tighter, what they have and what they don't have and what, how things look. And I don't see that here at all. I feel like if I was a stranger and I drove into our historic districts, I would not know they were historic, only by a sign that says so, not by the properties and how they're kept up and by some of the stuff I see, like the metal sheds and the metal garages and other things. And I would like to see if that's something that we could work on to perfect it more.
Absolutely. If you want to compile, historic districts can vary the gamut in terms of the criteria, right? So you look at a place like St. Augustine, the nation's oldest city, has a very extensive historic preservation guidelines. 211 pages to be exact. So if you want that level of detail, keep in mind, we don't have an internal historian or anyone with anywhere near the experience that the St. Augustine staff has. They have an archaeologist on staff. We don't have that. So we need to be cognizant of the practicalities of having numerous code provisions. But with that being said, if there's a list of criteria that you think, given the recent cases that you've seen, that you want to see codified in code, we can get that in there. We just need to know what the direction is from the board.
And that is my feeling, but I'm just one person. We
Right.
have a whole board here and I don't know how they feel. And if we could talk about it and see if we can come up with something together that we agree upon.
Mr. Jefferson.
I agree with you, and I think that signage, of course, it's an easy way. People come over here from Augustine or wherever, and they drive around looking for nice old houses at Christmas and other times. And if we had not every property having a sign, but in front of the Mellon House as an example, or the Gables, or different properties, maybe 2 or 3 per street, that would give a little rhythm. I grew up in a small town like this outside Indianapolis, and one Saturday morning, we heard construction outside of our house, and they're putting up a plaque, big plaque that's still there. And we didn't even know this when my parents bought the house. It was the site of the first log cabin in the county. It was the site of the first marriage in the county. And so, some of those little things might be interesting for people, and it might, who knows, we could have a little tour, self-guided tour.
It's something that I think that we talked
Signage.
about and great idea, by the way. I can recall talking about this a few times throughout the years, and it seems to me that it would fall to the homeowner to purchase the sign, but perhaps we would put together some guidelines for the signage. I guess where I was kind of going with it was something that could be read at the beginning of our meetings, just to give applicants, general public, kind of an idea of who we were or who we are and what we are charged with doing. And I just wrote something out quickly, so, please don't throw tomatoes, but something along the lines of, the purpose of the Historic Preservation Board is to steward the architecture of properties in our city's historic districts by applying the guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Historic Preservation. I mean, short, to the point.
Sure.
And see
Yeah,
what,
and it doesn't conflict with the code, so
yes, that's where my problem is. It doesn't help us when we have like the metal garages coming and stuff like that, because it doesn't have
Yeah.
that in there. And
Well, I
that's
think
what
that's-
I'd like to fix that.
yeah, I think that's different though. I think what the chair is saying is put a mission that we be read at the
Yes,
beginning of
yes,
each
I
meeting, so,
understood that, yes.
and then about the shed, the metal shed, that's something that has to be addressed in the code, we need to provide more certainty to the regulations, the standards that we have, because they're a little bit vague sometimes.
Yes, and how do
And-
we do that?
And
That's,
we need to be more precise,
so
Well,
we would
and-
have to agree on that and say we want to do that. And then
Right.
it would
Well,
go to
And then we
Jane.
will prepare something.
Absolutely. And
That will prepare something and bring it back to you
Okay,
for discussion.
And
thank you.
And I would-
procedure after that, if you give me the guidance on, let's run with the shed example, okay?
Okay,
No more metal sheds within the historic districts.
garages.
Okay, so that requires ancillary structures. How's that? That requires a draft ordinance, so the code can be officially changed. So if you give me that idea, I will draft something, I'll circulate it back to you during one of your board meetings, and then you vote on it during that meeting. And then it has a first and second hearing at the city commission level, and then it gets adopted into our municipal code. So that's the process.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I think we all agree, and we're all very cognizant of, that slippery slope of approving something one time makes it, able for people to do over and over and over. Okay, well, sir.
Are there different codes for historic district versus just, Palaka Heights or whatever? Do we have specific codes for the historic district, or are they just Palaka code?
Yeah, so you have, within the historic districts, it is a higher bar. You have a higher bar for, because you have the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. That is not a requirement anywhere else in the city. That is only a requirement in the historic districts. So where I think we're running into issues, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the problem is you're following the Department of Interior's guidelines. They are guidelines. They're not set in stone. They're very helpful. But I think what I'm hearing is that you want to see something in our code that is not just aspirational guidelines, but actual
Yes,
rules.
yeah, something that we can.
I would
stand
like that, and I would like to propose that we do that now if possible. Like,
Well, you can't take
I mean,
action.
we have
Yeah.
to, no, that we ask you, yes, we want to
Sure,
do that.
okay.
And that you would, if everybody
Yes.
agreed on that, and then.
Yeah, I agree that
Go
we
forward.
need more. I guess,
Teeth.
yeah, more
Teeth,
defined,
yes,
more
yes.
black and white of what we can and cannot approve, because I know a lot of times people say, well, you approved so-and-so down the street for that, but why won't you approve me for this? And then go a couple of cases down and then we approve it again. So it's not, we're not being consistent.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that if we had those guidelines in there, we would have that consistency and we'd be able to say, no, these are our codes. We can't allow this, but we can't allow that.
I think you would notice that it's a historic district more too.
Yeah, it would be more
Because when
unified.
everything looks the same and it doesn't look,
Mhm.
doesn't have the guidelines in those neighborhoods. Other than the house being big, we have so many beautiful homes in Palaca already that are not in the historic districts.
It's true.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that if we're gonna have the historic districts, that we should.
It should
make
be more
them-
defined.
Yeah, we should make them as nice as possible.
Well,
I just like to point out that those guidelines of the interior, Department of Interior, they're standard guidelines. I mean, they're not standard, the guidelines for historic structures. They don't talk about historic districts. So if you want something more specific, we will have to go beyond those guidelines.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're asking if we
Yeah, that's what we're
possibly
asking.
can
That's what I'm
put
asking.
in that. Let's get started on that process.
Well, metal sheds definitely, although we all know that a metal shed can come and then it can go. It's not attached to a building in any manner. Yeah, the garage is absolutely,
That's the one.
The ones that are on concrete foundations.
yes. But, you know, we have similar issues with siding all the time. Where, you know, the question is asked, well, we don't understand what the objection is to party board. You know, we run into, maybe not as often, but we have run into questions about windows where people have wanted to know, you know, what is the purpose of keeping that historic window? I could go on about that for days.
Mhm.
And
And-
siding on the visible side from the street or whether it's on the back.
That is absolutely true, but you know, if you think about it, if you own said piece of property and you're doing something on the back of the building that we can't see, what happens if you bought the lot behind you? And now there's another road and now all of a sudden you can see the back of the property. You know, I mean, there's things that seem to come up over and over. And of course, our very favorite, which is the after the fact COA,
That is a good one.
right? So maybe what we should do is put a little bit of thought, into, are those pretty much the top four? The metal shed garages, the siding, the windows, the after the fact COAs?
Yeah, yes, for me it is. I would just like to really tighten it up and like do the best that we possibly can. I remember years ago when I was renovating the house on 4th Street and Joff was code enforcement person at the time. And boy, he had me in tears more times than I can even tell you because I had to do this, I had to do this, I had to do this and this. And he said to me at the time, and I was like, yeah. He said, you'll be glad when it's all over with. And you have all those permits and all that stuff's done. And you know what? He was right. So it was a hard lesson,
Mhm.
but I would like to see us tighten it up because it was good. When I went to sell it, it was good.
Mhm.
It being that way, it was good for the neighborhood, the property value, so on.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's face it, history is something that you really can't get back.
Can't replace any of it.
Nope.
No.
Okay, so just so I understand,
Yes, ma'am.
the metal shed siding, windows, after the fact COAs. I have noticed that the roofs are an issue every once in a while.
Yes,
No
Um,
garage.
So do you want that included in it?
I would say include that as well.
Railings.
Railings?
Yeah.
We've had a few different spindle issues. But after the fact, it's one thing to do something and you either, the projects have a life of their own, and you have to do one, and you do second thing, and the third thing, and the fourth thing. You can't do four before you do three. But when somebody has added something to the structure without any kind of permit from the county, and I think one of the issues here is that they're throwing it to us, and we don't have any teeth to say, stop, or this portion can go forward, or the county can approve certain parts of it. You know, the county could approve an enclosure or a, you know, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And of course, you know, we always realize that it can be appealed to the city commission, and hopefully they would take our thoughts into consideration as to why we made that decision, but that doesn't always happen. And I totally agree that when we try to be as nice as we possibly can and as accommodating as we possibly can, and really in a way that isn't our job. You know, our job is kind of to follow the letter of what we've been given. But it is incredibly difficult to tell a homeowner, you know, these windows that you put in without going through the proper channels are not something that we think should be on this historic structure. That's a hard thing to say. So I'm in total agreement that, you know, the more that we have by way of a this is why we say it. This is clearer now. This is what we follow along with as we are making these just determinations, I think would be very helpful to us as a board.
And I think the brochures that we're going to discuss
Yeah.
will help with the people buying in the neighborhood
Yes.
to understand that there are all these
Mhm.
guidelines before they proceed to start doing
Right.
things.
Yes.
Just one other thing. As an example, when we put the mini splits in my house, the contractor went to the county and they said, no, we won't give you a permit. And he was busy working on that project and other projects. I mean, it's not his job to, I mean, it is, but it isn't. And so it kind of got lost over here. The county put it back over here, he came over here, and then it kind of got lost, and then it went back to the county. Because I went over there, I said, what's the process?
Mhm.
And so it kind of got lost over there and over here for a while. Like months. So as someone who's gone through that process of, this guy needs to finish or else he's gonna walk and I'm not gonna have air conditioning.
Hmm.
You know, so he finished.
Hmm.
And so that was an after the fact, but it was only because of the relationship between the county and the historical.
The timeline came into play, in
Right.
other words, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I think that honest mistakes certainly occur.
Yeah.
And this sounds to me that something that, you know, potentially fell through the cracks. I guess what I'm talking about is, and I've been on this board for years, is, you know, the property owners that come to you and say, I had no idea I moved to a historic district. Nobody told me I moved here. I had, you know,
Right.
no clue, no clue, no clue, no clue. And you know, you can say as many times as you want, well, that was your homework. Why didn't you do your homework? But it puts us in a precarious position. And I do think we try to be as accommodating as we possibly can as a board. But you know, it's a tough situation to be put in. So I think between asking, if we can please look into, tightening up some of our information that we have that we make reference to as we make decisions, I think is a great idea. And I would be happy to, I don't know exactly who I would hand the sort of mission statement to so that perhaps we could work on it a bit more. But I'm kind of going back to, again, throwing it out there. The mission of the Historic Preservation Board is to steward the architecture of properties in our city's historic districts by applying the guidelines of the Secretary of Interior Standards for Historic Preservation.
Yeah, just, you can hand it out to staff, you know.
Okay, because I
That's somehow-
do feel like that is something that I would be very comfortable reading at the beginning of each meeting
each meeting.
so that folks, you know, in attendance and in Zoom world would know that this is who we are, this is what we are charged with doing, and we do take it seriously.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to point out, you know, to what Mr. Jefferson was referring to about the confusion between what city and the county. we have a much better coordination with the county today. And actually, the county would not issue a permit when they see that it's in the historic district. They will not issue a permit unless, there is a certificate that is sent by the city that you have approved or the staff has approved. So it's a very good coordination now.
I am thrilled to hear that. I really am.
Yeah.
I think that everybody's getting on the same page.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are.
I agree with you,
Yeah.
and I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are going the
The
same
county
direction
district, they won't issue the permit until.
until they have that.
That's
Yeah.
encouraging.
It is.
Is it
Very
possible
encouraging.
to require, if a property is in the historic district, to require that that's on the MLS listing information? Could the city say to the MLS, the board realtors that are around here, we are requiring that if the property is in the historic district, that it needs to be on the listing itself? So the agent knows, the customer, Zillow, everyone's at Zillow now,
I think we could ask very nicely, but I don't think that we could force the issue.
So I can tell you, having dealt with the Florida Board of Realtors, anything that you put on the MLS listing that could potentially detract from the sale of the property,
And
they will
not.
object to it
They will,
adamantly.
yes, I
And in
agree.
fact, if you try to do this, I can guarantee you next legislative session, there will be a ban preempting us from
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Can you
But I
even
think the
refer
brochure will help
yours?
to
Because
that end.
when I was a realtor, I still am, even though I'm not practicing. We had brochures back then, and when
Brochure,
I
yes.
sold a property,
Sure, yeah.
I would include, tell them
Yeah.
that.
well, the agent put in the description, they put that it's, the property is in a historic district. Many of them do,
Mhm.
some of them don't, but if there was some incentive or some request by the city to say that,
Brochures.
they're not gonna get the brochure.
I don't think we can go.
Well, if they make any kind of changes to their home and they require a permit, we can also have the brochures at the county office and they can.
That's
hand
sort of
it.
after the fact, though.
But
You
it's
know,
also,
because to address the thing that, the point where, well, I didn't know it was a historic district.
Well, and I'm sorry, but I would go back to as a potential new property owner looking into purchasing something, do your homework. Yeah.
and a lot of times when you're going into a neighborhood to buy a home, if you're looking to buy a historical home, you're gonna pinpoint which areas are historical or not. You're not really going to go into an area, go, oh, I like that house because it's not a historical. I mean, you're gonna know either one or the other.
You are, but the investors aren't. I mean, I just drove around before the meeting here. And you can see, I mean, there are lots of out-of-state plates. And you can see on the code enforcement information out there on the bulletin board. They're not from here.
Well, and
There are lots of investors
Yeah.
snapping stuff up.
well, and once again, if you're an investor, one would think that you would do your homework.
You would
Um,
know the areas.
Exactly. Not, and I feel like we're gonna move along from this fairly quickly, but just to give an example, I love my home. Absolutely adore it. I'm over on Third Street. I fell in love with it the moment that I saw it. Did I spend time in the neighborhood in the evening? No. Did I look into who the people were who lived around me? No. Therefore, when I bought the house and I realized that the home directly next door to me was basically, for all intents and purposes, a boarding house. And there were a lot of issues with noise and horrible things going on. Whose fault was that? Well, that was my fault. I didn't do my homework. Due diligence. I went into it with blinders on and I paid the price. All right, do we need some sort of a motion to move ahead?
You can't
No,
make a motion.
it's a
during the
workshop.
Oh,
Workshop.
well, there is that. Okay.
I took notes. I'll have something for you.
Head on the pillow, but it's-
Well, not quite, but
I don't have to worry tonight.
I would at that issue.
I would request that if there are specific parameters, language from codes from other municipalities that you really like, and you think would work well, if you could just email it to me so I'm not spinning my wheels.
Yeah.
I'm gonna refer back on many things to St. Augustine because I'm very familiar with it. I've worked with that historic architectural review board many, many times. So if you could just help me out there, I'd appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting me know that that's how workshops work. We don't do a lot of them, so this is all about learning. Let's move on to discussion item B, a presentation, the Sunshine Do's and Don'ts, brought to us by Madam City Clerk. Mhm. Okay.
Good afternoon, members of the board and staff. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you guys today on the do's and don'ts of the Sunshine Law. Madam Planning Clerk, next slide. And if you would just scroll up just a tiny bit with the other way. There you go. Perfect. All right. So I was asked to go over some do's and don'ts of the Florida Sunshine Law, to go a little bit more in depth than I have in the past when I come before the board to speak about the Sunshine Law in general. So the first slide is all the things to do. Then we'll go into the things not to do, which is really just the flip of the things to do, right? All right. Do conduct all meetings in the public. So that's kind of the biggest tenet of the Sunshine Law, is that all board meetings of a board under the sunshine is in the public. Do provide reasonable notice to the public of all meetings. And in the notice, we specify the time and date and location of the meeting so that the public can participate. Do keep minutes, maintain detailed minutes of the meetings, including discussions and decisions. Those minutes then become available to the public. Here's a side note. If notes are transmitted between board members, they become public record. So a lot of times you'll see me or Renee after the meeting trying to find notes that were passed between board members. It's because they become part of the public record if they have anything to do with the meeting. Do allow public participation, permit the public to attend and participate in the meetings, and give the opportunity to the members of the public to speak on agenda items. So a lot of times you'll hear two places during the meeting where public comment is taken. A lot of times this board will open the floor to general public comment in the beginning, just to cover anything that someone in the audience may want to speak. And the purpose of this is to provide an opportunity for the public to speak in a civil manner that may be something that's not on the agenda. And then usually our chair opens up during regular business an item for the public to speak on each agenda item, just to ensure that they're being heard. Do ensure accessibility. So a lot of times at the bottom of a public notice that you may read, it'll say, please contact the city clerk's office at least 24 hours before the meeting to ensure that reasonable accommodations are being made for those with accessibility. This is actually a federal law, the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act law. And as you can tell, we usually have most of our meetings in this building, and we have a ramp in the back. So we do try to make reasonable accommodations. I'm gonna mention that we recently had a request for additional pillows in the chamber. I didn't want anyone to say that I was violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we made sure there's some additional pillows out there.
Wow, I feel powerful.
It's reasonable, right? You need some comfort. Okay, we'll buy you some pillows. That's reasonable, right? And of course, if it wasn't reasonable, then we maybe could say, hey, that's above and beyond our budget, or that's above and beyond, So try to make reasonable accommodations. So the flip side of that, the don'ts. Don't hold private meetings. Avoid public discussions outside of the public view. Don't use undisclosed communication channels. So if there's an email, a text, or other communication between the board members about a matter to become before the board, that would become public record. We say to refrain doing that because of the requirement of the Sunshine Law that all communications between the board need to be in the public. Obviously, emails and text messages would not be in the public view. Don't ignore quorum rules. Don't hold unofficial meetings without public notice, right? The do hold public meetings under public notice. Now the don't is not do it, as it constitutes an official meeting under the law. Don't restrict access to the records. So that would mean that if you do email or text someone, maybe there was a situation where you had no idea they were going to come before the Historic Preservation Board, right? And you exchanged a text with someone. it's okay. It happens. You didn't know it was going to come before the board, but once it does become before the board, we would disclose that. We wouldn't delete it and try to cover it up. We would just disclose it. Hey, this happened. It was innocent, and disclose it and move along. Don't avoid public input. Do not prevent public participation from the meetings, right? So the do was do allow public input. So the don't is don't restrain them from giving public input. Because, and going back to what I initially said, public input is the foundation of the law. Don't, and here's the one for staff, don't conduct polls outside of the meeting. And it's for you guys too. A lot of times, especially when you get into more situations and more controversial or more heated topics, there may become a desire, and it's okay in some states other than Florida. It's just not okay in Florida and other states that follow the Sunshine Law, to want to poll board members. Hey, before we bring this before you, we want to know kind of what your thoughts on this is. But that can easily come into, hey, how are you going to vote on this topic? So there's a fine line between, hey, can you give me some of your thoughts, to, hey, how are you going to vote on that topic? Because that would be a violation of the Sunshine Law. So before I move on to the next slide, any questions on the do's and don'ts? Good refresher, I think, for some of you guys. So to move along in the presentation, the next slide is on panel.
Yeah.
Anything.
I go.
Oh, please, and then I'll.
Don't hold private meetings.
Mhm.
So I think that means that as we're walking to the car, we shouldn't talk about what just happened.
If there's a chance that it would come back before you, know, and there is a chance it can come back before you. As you guys have recently seen with appeals, it's possible that a property owner will appeal your decision. It go to the commission for appeal, and the commission remand it back to you. So it's very well likely. And there's I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the appeal is 15 days they have for opportunity to appeal. So within that 15-day window, I would say don't discuss it amongst yourselves. After that 15-day window, then you might be okay.
Well, how about something like this, the siding that's not new siding for the back of the house?
Mhm.
You know, when we had a discussion as a group about that, there was I think someone sat in this chair who was okay with having the siding in the back be different, as I was. And I think actually Larry Beaton was. So that is a big topic. It's not a specific topic. So can we have a discussion about what might be acceptable for windows or siding or things in a
I would
in a
say no,
non-meeting?
honestly.
No, because you're actually about to instruct me to draft an ordinance that we're going to have you vote on to bring up to the city commission.
Yeah, now we're gonna vote on them, but I mean, you know, a few months ago,
If
that's,
if it's an issue that is reasonable to come before this board for a vote, then no.
When in doubt, no.
so,
When in doubt,
Okay.
don't.
when in doubt, don't. All right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is hard to do, especially in a small community, and it's even harder to do because so many of us are friends and, you know.
And that's what goes back to, if it accidentally happens because we're human, don't try to hide that it happened.
Well,
Just
I mean,
next
like, I was
time.
at Walmart and
close
somebody
it.
came up to me and started talking, and it's like, I said, I'm sorry you feel that way. She was just saying she didn't agree with
Mhm.
something we did, and I'm sorry you feel that way, but we as a board made that decision. So is that talking out of school?
No, because she doesn't serve on the board.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
just amongst board members.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. In referring you back to previous presentations we've given in the past, the major tenet of the Sunshine Law, and I'm sorry for any of you who may not be religious on this board, but there's a quote that the Florida League of Cities uses, is where two or more board members are gathered, there the Sunshine Law is in the midst. So if you are talking with someone who's not a member of the board, there's not two or more of you present.
Okay.
So you can talk to Jane Doe about it. You just can't talk to Elizabeth Van Rensburg.
Okay.
Now, the only caveat to that I would raise red flags is if Jane Doe then goes around and talks to the other board members and uses what you said as a conduit,
Mm.
then you'd run into issues. So don't use Jane Doe as your conduit. Hey, go tell Brianna
No.
that I said this.
No.
Can't do that. Then you get into trouble. But
Yeah.
yeah, 2 or more board members
have
is the
one
rule
other
of
one.
thumb.
So a new neighbor of mine being friendly, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Thank you so much for buying the house. You're gonna fix it up. Oh, yes, I'm gonna fix it up, this and that. Do you know that you need to get a permit to do this work? No, I didn't know. I said, oh, well, you need to contact the city and go get an application. So that kind of that's information.
Oh,
That's not saying.
yeah, and I see that you would have no problem with that, Tim.
Mhm.
And matter of fact, I think that's a good thing. Now, when said neighbor came before us, you would then, and please correct me if I'm wrong, say, I would like to share ex parte communication that I had with the applicant. He's my next door neighbor. I encouraged him to talk to
Talk
city
to
staff.
City, okay.
Exactly. It's more along the lines of, okay, well,
Board.
here's a ridiculous example. About a week ago, you sent me a text asking if we were gonna have the workshop, and my immediate response was, that's a Sunny question.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's a Sunny question. She's over there. She's not over here anymore. She moved.
I'm not in my seat.
But again, what my take on the sunshine law is, you and I talk about other things, what type of wine we like, what type of movies we're binge watching. We just leave any topic of anything that could
But you
come
called
before
the
us.
meeting. You called the meeting,
I
and she as the
Yeah.
corresponding,
But I would
person.
still err on the safe side. And besides that, I'm not the one that puts together
the,
the
the
quorum.
room and everything.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I'm always gonna err on the side of caution.
Well, so I have to ask you about any meeting that's coming, and can I add something to the agenda, or?
The
Who-
planning
Do we
dep-
have are we having that meeting? I mean, I was bugging you for a week. It's like, are we having the meeting?
Yeah, the planning department has been coordinating a lot of the agendas of this board lately. But that being said, staff welcomes communication between us and the board. We love this board and we're here to serve this board and to try to make the sunshine law easier for you guys, because no one is born knowing what the sunshine law says. And it takes years of understanding of what to do and a don't. So we get all of that and we deal with it on a daily basis because we have multiple boards that we.
So of course, I didn't know what the procedure was. So now I know. Any question, you get it.
Yeah, well, we.
No.
We.
Get ready.
I'm okay with being your point person. I usually, as
Every
long as y'all are okay with me, directing you to the right staff member.
Every
but-
day I'm gonna send you an email.
And I would welcome that. I appreciate, like, I think I've told you guys in the past, and I just keep saying it. I appreciate what you guys do. It's hard to sit on this dais and then see your friends and neighbors, come to you with those questions like you're mentioning. Hey, what about that siding? I didn't like that you guys decided that. What? Because you guys have the tough decisions. And that's one thing that staff, or at least the department heads, maybe not the city manager, but the department heads, we don't have the ability to make decisions like the board and the commission does. So you guys, as those appointed officials, wear that hat of decision making. And we realize that it's a very difficult hat to wear, and we're glad to support you guys.
And I think before you move on, at the bottom of don't conduct polls outside of meetings, you mentioned sidebar conversations. Is that like, for example, if we're on camera before the meeting begins and we're all talking about our week? I mean, where are you going with that?
Matters that are to come before the board, no sidebar. So this meeting is called to order at a certain time and it's adjourned at a certain time. Sidebars could be maybe someone has their microphone muted and they're whispering in so-and-so's ear. I don't like that project. Or I think that's an amazing project. Be sure you vote on that. That's where I was going with sidebars. Those because all the public has the right to participate in the meeting and hear what you're saying. So if you're purposely avoiding the public hearing you, it would be a violation of the sunshine law.
It's kind of like those conversations where maybe Elizabeth's talking and do that little backside whisper thing and the other communications around what's really trying to be communicated. Yeah.
Okay. And once again, I did,
to the story is don't.
yeah, just
Okay,
don't.
that's
Yeah.
Don't.
Well, and
Don't
some,
do it.
yeah. And some of us have been on city boards for years and others of us, this is kind of new to us. So I thought it was important that we all understood.
Yes.
Yeah, no notes, no sidebars, no whispering, about matters to come before you. Now, if it's, hey, I love your dress, you just look beautiful today, or hey, that's a great tie. Of course, those whispers are fine because that's you guys building rapport amongst you guys and working as a cohesive unit. So when we say sidebars, matters to come before you. Did I cover your questions, Mr. Jefferson? Perfect. Permission to move along?
Yeah, next page.
All right, so next page. So I was asked to go a little bit more in depth on penalties. What happens if you do violate the Sunshine Law? What are the teeth behind the law? This is something that in the past we actually have not covered with the majority of our boards. The reason being, we usually spend the majority of our time talking about what to do, what not to do. So this gets a little bit more in depth on, well, what happens if you violate the law? So I went to two sources to create this slide. I went to the Florida Sunshine Manual, and also I went to the City Code. Now, the Sunshine Manual, I've tried to send it to you guys, usually when someone gets appointed to the board, and then when you're reappointed to the board, I try to send you guys that link to the Sunshine Manual. It does change periodically every year with different case law, things like that, that's added to it, but usually the link doesn't change. And if you Google Sunshine Law 2024, it should take you to the Attorney General's website, and that's where the electronic version is found. So under this Florida Sunshine Law, it says a few bullet points of things that would take place. One thing is that decisions taken at meetings may be voidable. So say someone is doing that whispering or having that backdoor meeting. If the applicant chooses to sue the city or appeal to the city commissioner, the decision can be that the decision of the board was null and void because actions were taken that was out of the public view. Another thing could be removal from office. And that's kind of, you'll see when we touch base on the code about that. A knowing violation. So here comes kind of into back to what I was telling you guys. Knowingly violating the Sunshine Law and it just, hey, I'm a new board member, I'm so sorry I made an accident, are two different things. And you can see some of that under the case law in Florida. A knowing violation is punishable as a second-degree misdemeanor, which includes imprisonment up to 60 days and or fines of $500. Whereas unintentional violations may be punishable by a fine of up to $500. This is kind of going back to was there ill intent behind the communication or was it just an accident? A lot of times judges will look at that and Jane can kind of speak more on that if needed. Another thing that can happen is attorney's fees can be awarded. So say maybe an applicant had a subcontractor coming out and was doing work. Maybe they're doing the work and all this is going on kind of in the middle. That the judge in the case may decide, hey, all of this was voidable by that person having that sidebar conversation. We're throwing it all out and we're also awarding attorney's fees because it was that much of malicious intent. So turning to the city's code, we talked a minute about the Sunshine Law says that there can be removal from office. This is actually codified in section 5476D3. The city commission may remove members for just cause. Like I said a minute ago, staff, we're not decision makers. We in no way, shape, or form tell the commission who to appoint or who not to appoint or who to remove, but you guys need to understand, and it is staff's obligation to tell you guys that if you do willingly violate the law and the city commission becomes aware of that, they can remove you for cause, and that cause would be violation of the Sunshine Law.
Yes, sir.
I happen to be on the phone today with two MLSs. They're two, Jacksonville, the Northeast FAR, I forget, NEFAR. And Augustine has its own board of realtors and MLS. Could I contact someone at those offices and ask about putting in something in the listing? Because that's that's the way to do it, to know that people, it's like we give notice,
Mhm.
you give notice to meetings. That's sort of like our giving people notice they were coming to buy here.
Are you asking if that violates sunshine law?
No, I'm asking if, I'm sorry, I thought we were finished with sunshine.
Not quite yet,
Okay,
but
Going back to that, hopefully.
I'm back on the other one. Yeah, I want to talk to that. I want to ask for permission from the board if I can contact the MLS.
all right, well, I tell you what, let's let Sunny wrap up.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I hate talking about penalties, but I was asked to provide to you guys what the Sunshine Manual and the code says about the penalties. So that kind of summarizes what I had to say. Any questions regarding penalties? I hope we never get to that point. So this is why the presentation usually doesn't go this far in depth, because usually I just drill it into your heads, the Sunshine Law, 2 or more, don't talk, you're good. But that if we actually had to talk about the teeth of the law, that's what's before you on that slide is the teeth of the law.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions?
No, thank you. Thank you for going in depth and telling us.
I appreciate it.
Listen, you do this, you're gonna get punished. I like it.
60 days.
Yeah, not good. Let's not do that. All right, I'll turn it back over to Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sonny.
59 nights.
Thank you. Jane, help us on Mr. Jefferson's question.
If he wants to contact them, fine, go for it. At least ask, then you
Yeah.
have information.
Okay.
I don't think you need the board's permission to do that. It's just
Okay.
an inquiry.
Then I will.
There you go. All right, are we ready to move along?
I was just gonna say, I
Yes, ma'am.
think it would be helpful, like if you did a quarterly mailing just to your area, the north and south. I know when we moved here, we looked at a house in the historic district, and we were lucky enough to have a realtor who was willing to explain to us the procedures. I had absolutely no idea that there was that kind of red tape involved. I just always wanted an older home. It's blue.
She can't hear it.
Well, thank you. And I tell you what, maybe we should, why don't we bring that to the section of the agenda where we talk about possible great uses for that brochure we'd like to get. Okay. Thank you very much, though. And that was not me limiting public input, by the way, just so you know. I'm teasing you. All right, moving down to discussion item C. The thought to change the time of our historic preservation regular meeting. And this, again, is an item that I thought would be something we should talk about. So I asked to be included in this workshop. As I mentioned earlier, as we all know as board members, lately our meetings have gotten longer and longer. This causes items which we would like to address, which are on the agenda oftentimes to get moved off to the next agenda for the next meeting, which is equally long. It's part of the reason why we're here in a workshop today. So another thing that comes to the front of my mind is that thought of keeping city staff here past 5 o'clock. If we don't have to do that, why would we? So I was going to see how the rest of the board felt about maybe perhaps moving our meetings from 5 o'clock down to, or pardon me, from 4 o'clock down to 3 o'clock, which really would allow us all the time that we need. 2 hours is definitely plenty. And it would not keep city staff from being here, past their, I don't believe they have an expiration date, but you know what I mean. You do? Okay.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. I have a job that I have to be at, or take leave. Is there a way if items are not presented at a meeting, we could do another meeting within that same month or something like that, something where we can break it up and maybe have 2 meetings a month instead of just I know. It's just the thing is, I guess maybe I'm unlike some, I'm not self-employed. I have a
Job.
like a 9-to-5 job.
Mhm.
Not saying that none of y'all don't have jobs, but it's harder for me to take off time than I mean, today it was almost like pulling teeth because I didn't read the attachment that was on the email of what time the board was meeting. It just says, hey, see you on the 27th. I didn't see the time. So I had to make a lot of arrangements at my office to try to get here in that time. And literally I came in like 4 minutes before it started.
Mhm.
So that's just my concern about moving it up.
The only input I would add is these are volunteer boards, and it is going to be hard to recruit, and you guys are missing some critical members of your board. You're missing a planner and you're missing an attorney. So to the extent that those volunteers also have 9 to 5 jobs, it would be hard to fill those roles.
Looking toward a compromise, how about the concept of continuing to have our monthly meetings at 4 o'clock, as we have done, and then just going ahead and scheduling a quarterly workshop to try to take care of items that need to be moved forward on if we couldn't get to them on the agenda they appeared on.
Do you mean regular items or not regular?
No, I mean, items such as today.
Okay.
Yeah. Certainly not hold a workshop because we're speaking to an applicant about, a
Right.
project that requires a COA. Absolutely not. Just, if we have things that continue to fall through the cracks, maybe try even twice a year to get together in a workshop of some function to say, well, like today, for example, how many months have we been going back and forth about the brochure?
Here.
Yeah,
July's a year.
Long time.
right. So,
So items that are not necessarily needing to be voted on have quarterly meetings, kind of like our refresher on Sunshine Law, kind of like
Yeah.
what we're having today. Refreshers, presentations.
That would be good.
I also would like to say that based on our conversation earlier with the ordinances and stuff, I think once we get all that straightened out and get it defined, I don't think our conversations will be as long because they'll be
It'll be a little bit more
more
streamlined.
cut and dry
Yeah.
because here it is.
okay.
I think I was struggling with a lot of that, so
Yeah.
I think it will eliminate that.
All right, so we all feel that we could give the applicant and the public and anyone with any concerns the amount of time that they need to feel comfortable. That we
Yeah.
have heard them, but we could on our own part streamline ourselves a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that to me would be the perfect world scenario.
What about repeat applications when they come back to us? And I feel that when we get a repeat and they haven't done any change to their application, but that's not very courteous or professional. And here we're having to say it over and over again to an applicant. And it seems like it's happened more than once. So maybe there's a way we can look at the reapplication, if you call it that, and if nothing has really changed, we just say, no, we deny it. Don't go into the reasons why and, oh, we're revisiting this and revisiting that. It's like, okay, well, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
It's like we're taking a long time on some of these applications.
It does definitely feel like we're
Oh, we
taking a
are.
long time because, yeah, we are taking a long time. I think if we ask an applicant to come back to us with further information, that's one thing. But I feel like as well, there are certainly parts of an application that while we may feel strongly about this and we need more information, we don't have a problem with it. So I think it's on to us to help the applicant keep kind of the process going.
Well, if an applicant, do they have any correspondence after our meeting with them? And they're gonna come back next month. Is there any correspondence between month to month? Like, so a week before our second meeting with them, maybe
Someone on city staff getting in
somebody would say,
touch with the
"Have you
applicant.
changed your application? Have you done your homework? Have you done what we've asked you to do?" Because sometimes it seems like we're just doing it all over again.
We usually have contact with the applicant. When the items continue and there are things that they need to address.
Yeah.
Staff usually calls them to see where they are with it. Most of the time, we don't get a response back.
Yeah.
So,
I was just seeing how we could tighten the meetings up a little bit.
I gotcha. All right, so I am sensing that we are not doing anything. We're just going to be hopeful that our meetings could be a little more streamlined and we'll keep them at 4 o'clock as we do. And then if we need to have a workshop for the purposes of continuing education or moving items along, we will ask.
Since we're talking about times, just a reminder that our next meeting, July 11th, we have a city commission meeting too. So our meeting might be a little bit short. We might have to finish the meeting by 5 o'clock.
All right, so we have 1 hour to begin and finish. That'll be great training, won't it?
Yeah. Go ahead and say I won't be here at that meeting.
Everyone.
I'm gonna be out of town, I'm sorry. Please accept my absence.
Oh, okay. Actually, are you hearing that? Yeah, because I had said that I wouldn't be here because it was my birthday, but then I haven't gotten any better offers. So I was thinking of coming. But that would mean that you potentially have,
We might have a quorum.
yeah, you may not have a quorum. All right, well, we will deal with that when we get to it.
Yes.
All right, are we ready to move on to discussion item B? Our infamous historic districts brochure. As you can all see on about page, I'm gonna say 8, no, maybe 7. I take it back, it is not numbered. It's more or less page 10, how about that? We have been kicking this around quite a bit. It has changed considerably since we first looked at it. I believe that everything that was on my pretty please list has gone into this. Of course, I wasn't privy to everyone else's list because we all turned ours in separately. But has everyone had a chance to have a look at this? Because I would just mention one thing. I believe these will be printed in-house. They're not going to a printer. Is that correct? Come on up, Peter.
I think that's really at the direction of the board, what you want to do in city staff.
I guess
don't
where I
know
was
there's-
going with that is we're not gonna print off like 20,000 of these. I mean, these can be changed if, you know, down the line, we see something that needs to be.
Again, it's what you want and what the planning department wants
That
and
was
what,
my thought. Let's,
what,
this is wonderful.
Yeah,
Let's start
let's-
using it.
Let's get her done.
and Get her done. And if, you know, in 3 months or 6 months, somebody says, oh, well, what about this? Then we can change it. So get a couple $100 and get it done in that.
I'd like to just know what the people's ideas on where they're gonna get distributed.
Well, we had certainly talked about area realtors. We had certainly, well, I believe we spoke about the Chamber of Commerce.
Title company.
Title companies, yeah. Yeah.
What about the people that are already are in the historic neighborhood? I know you're not supposed to put stuff in people's mailboxes. I know.
Well, I mean, I think that these brochures could definitely be, we could ask if the South Historic District Neighborhood Association would like a short stack of them. I personally, I think that anybody that would like a short stack of these, we should give it to them. But I think that we can, you know, target, and I would be happy to volunteer to jump in the car with Peter when they're printed and help him get them out.
we can certainly do that. I mean, if we print them in-house, printing stuff on the City Hall color copier costs 10 cents a page.
And then
10 cents a page.
And if it goes out for printing, you know?
I
A
don't
lot
know
more.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this is not really a mailable piece at the moment. This is something, you know, in the future, we could make it mailable. But I think we can. Yeah, I don't think we're supposed to do that.
It has to be door to door.
I think
But I think they look great. Peter, I think you've done a wonderful job. You know, of course, I'm not gonna say it's upside down because you printed it like this for a reason. But I think at the moment, this looks really good and it's exactly, I believe, what we wanted to happen.
And I think as you said, it's a fluid document. You can change it on the fly as long as, you know. So we can change things. I know Lorenzo and I had talked about changing a couple of the photographs out, which we can do. But that's just something we can do month to month if we want to.
Yeah, very easily.
It's not.
Just one comment, tips for residents.
Mhm.
Have looked at it. If you justify the text.
Yes.
Because I was reading character, and historic, the IC is stuff like that. Is that possible?
We could do that, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, we certainly could do that.
Yeah.
The reason I'm laughing is Ms. Krantz and I have an ongoing discussion about the justification versus ragged right. But yes,
Are we happy with this? Can we get some printed and we'll start getting them out there?
There's a couple of typos I'd like to address
Yeah.
with Mr. Willett, if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, is-
Absolutely.
I have a question. Is there a way that we can, not to be too picky, but pick better pictures?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of all of the.
Not a fan of that. I mean, you got a power line, you got, I mean, it's not depicting our
well,
historic.
as I was referring to, Lorenzo and I were discussing
one we wanna
changing
change.
exactly that photograph. Yeah, so, and yes, I'm sure there are typos and other
Didn't care for the
issues.
photo item.
I mean,
Mhm.
the one that Patty and I had, put the information together. I mean, was there no photos from that one that you could use?
Well, actually, I have the whole package here. We can use whatever photograph you'd like us to use.
It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't look very professional and friendly.
It's all.
I'm not trying, I mean, it's
No,
very.
trust me, I don't take anything personally. It's all subjective.
Okay.
And we were just looking, we'll,
I wanted to put a picture of the St. Mark Church.
Mhm.
I had a few shots of that and I was talking with Peter, maybe we can substitute that picture with the
Yeah, I
St. Mark. I
mean,
think it's more.
Yeah, there's a lot of pictures that we could use. I mean, we could even use the Bronx Holland House, one of the older ones without the
Well,
fence.
Yes, I was gonna
the-
say.
the-
Front,
the-
not a current photo.
the issue is that we had to choose photographs that we had rights to. And I took that photograph, so we have rights to that. So we
Okay.
have to choose, we'll find a photograph that we have rights to
Mhm.
use.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty, I mean,
Yes.
out there that we could use that I'm sure the city has posted even on their page about even the historical society and stuff like that.
I do love the ladies down here.
We actually have rights to that because those are actually historical photographs that a gentleman in the Panhandle colorizes. His name is Bill Price, and they're all out of copyright. They're all historic.
There is
But those photographs are from,
And they have.
yeah, those photographs are from the Florida Memory Project, some of the Florida State Archives. And Mr. Price, this gentleman, his hobby is to colorize them. And so it's a rights-free photograph.
All right, so we'll get the front photograph changed and then
And
the typos
and the
addressed.
hyphens.
Yep,
And then we're okay to just go ahead and start the distribution.
I think so.
Yes,
yes, I
Okay.
think it's
I
time.
was gonna print 1,000 of them, but.
All right.
Yeah, let's start with,
1,200.
let's start with a
How
few.
many houses are in the north and south?
You got
A lot.
what, 60 something on the north side and is it 200?
200, I say.
Yeah, 220 maybe.
So 300.
All right, moving,
We want them to on that.
We'll handle that.
Okay.
all right. Let's move on to our final point of discussion. This is item E. This is discussion as to options to protect the facades of buildings in the central business district. A memo from Mr. Jefferson. I wouldn't call it a memo, an email. Asking what the options to protect the facades of historic buildings in the business district would be. Who am I looking? Because he asked a direct question of staff. Is that something that staff is going to advise us of, or should we workshop more along the lines of what we think should happen? I'm not really sure where to go with this.
Yeah, I would think that Mr. Jefferson would tell us, exactly what the purpose is.
I had a historic property in Vermont, and I found out through the state preservation historic board, I forget what trust, that you can actually sell the facade easement. And that way it's protected. So I own this building, I sell the easement, the next buyer knows that they have this easement, just like an easement to get through the property. So that's why I use the word facade in there, because in my mind, it's like, that would be wonderful if we could get somebody to buy up some important facades. But if that's not gonna happen, we still, I think, because the business district is in the middle of the historic district, that we need to have some cooperation about what's going on with the facades, not inside the facades.
But I think the code is very specific, there are very specific standards for design standards in our code for that district.
I
Well-
think what's happening is, and correct me if I'm wrong, and it's hearsay, but I was told that the downtown buildings do not, if they want to knock them down, they can knock them down. They're not protected in any way, shape or form,
They don't come before us at all.
because like, the
So.
gas station was knocked down. I'm hearing other buildings are getting ready to be knocked down. So there's like, anybody can do anything they want. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I'm not sure that they can do anything they want, but we do have specific design standards in the code for renovation, for alterations, and for new development, redevelopment. And I think I put in your packages, and you can see.
Mhm.
So who
Uh,
did they?
I don't know if they
Who do they go
know that,
before?
because no, I don't think I've ever seen anybody come.
Well, they don't come to us because the downtown, the CBD is not a historic district.
Say.
Yeah.
So, let me see if I understand.
Texaco, did they come before the city planning department and say, we're
Sure.
gonna tear this down?
No, the gas station fell down. They were devastated by what happened. Mr. Troiano explained it. They said that when they pulled the windows out, the roof fell in, that the windows were actually supporting the roof. And they had no idea. And so that was, they're going to rebuild it so that it looks exactly like it did. And that will actually be coming before you in
Right.
So I,
several weeks. but-
there's so many things I didn't know.
Their
They said
intent
they
was to
allow the fire
preserve.
department to use it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was what we were just saying. They would not come before us.
So not,
No.
no,
No, they will not come before the,
No.
we come for the planning board.
planning board.
So
So
Right.
really, the only way, to my mind, that this could be quote unquote fixed, if indeed it's broken, would be for the central business district to become a historic district, in which case they would come before us. However, what the property owners in the central business district are going to say about, another level of governance, so to speak. Wow,
Has that been asked of the business district?
I believe it has, yes.
You all have the historic resource survey that was done back in the 1980s, where that particular, I emailed it to all of you, so I know you have it. Where that particular area was surveyed. The business owners there, the property owners have to be amenable to being within the purview of a historic district. As much as you guys love being in a historic district, there are downsides, and they do see it as additional regulation. They may not be in favor of being included in a historic district. That's why you have a portion of the North Historic District is not in the North Historic District, because those property owners didn't want you guys telling them what they could do with their property.
And here we're referring to, of course, the Mulholland Park area behind the
Right.
Bronson Mulholland House.
Well, if I may ask this
You bet.
question, if I may ask this question, what are the boundaries for that downtown historic district with the planning board? Can they just knock down any buildings they want to knock down? What are the guidelines for them that you tell them?
I'm not sure that there is any guideline for demolition of existing buildings, but there are guidelines, design guidelines, standards for alteration, repairs, and it's very, very specific. If you look in your package, it goes from awnings and canopy, it tells you exactly what type of canopies and how, balconies,
So if they knock the
color,
building,
exterior. Yeah, to knock down the
if
building,
they-
I don't.
if I may, if they knock the building down and then they wanted to rebuild another one, let's say, then they would follow what you're saying there, the facade and the awnings and so on and
Yeah,
so
you have
forth.
to follow what you see. the
So they
code, but
would
if
come
want to
before you on
demolish-
that.
If they want to demolish, I don't think there is any provision in this particular standard. for the demolition.
And I would like to ask the attorney, is that like, because that downtown area is crucial to
Yeah.
the city of Palaca, to me. And the joining of the historic districts, and that's why people would come here, not for the Walmart.
So that is completely out of this board's jurisdiction.
Okay.
If that is something you want to pursue, you're going to need to make that request through one of the city commissioners to have that place on a city commission agenda in order to reconsider any provision that this board has no ability
Thank
to
you. Yeah,
control
see,
that.
this is just a question we had, but we didn't know.
So that would
So
be
there
two
you
options
go.
with it, Jane, right?
I'm
One,
sorry?
it will be like two options. One would be to extend the purview of the historic district to include that. And the other one would be to expand the historic district to include those portions.
The property owners
But-
would need to
Absolutely.
be
they
in
would have to.
favor of the expansion to, you're basically, the way they view it is you're infringing on their property rights. So unless they're amenable, the majority is amenable, that's not going to happen. So
Or you go before the commission and
go
do that way.
before the commission and
ways.
have some, additional requirements for that particular downtown district when it comes to demolition and new construction.
Or hope and pray that new business owners want to try to preserve the downtown look.
Right.
Is there a
And that's
code
what the corporate-
enforcement of that area?
Sorry,
Code enforcement, we see.
of course.
It does?
Yeah.
So if there's a building with no broken windows and things like that, is there a code violation put on that property owner?
If we're made aware of it, absolutely.
Okay. I'm new to town, so I see buildings that are neglected and on the board, they've come before us to say we want to tear them down because they're so bad off. Well, if you hadn't neglected them, they wouldn't be so far off, So I
So-
think I see some of that on St. John's Avenue too.
Case in point, 720 St. John's Ave, you may know it as the facade with nothing in it. We just negotiated a lien reduction. They had tens of thousands of dollars in liens on that particular property. If you have a question of any property, Patty knows this because she calls me all the time.
I'm sorry.
I don't mind ever. I really don't.
Thank
Okay,
you. You're
all right.
very helpful. Thank you.
Call me.
Okay,
And just give me the address. I can't work without an address.
Okay.
If you want to know if there's a code violation on a particular address anywhere in the city, call me. I can look it up. I can let you know.
the second part of that question is, what is the code violation? They get a letter and then what happens?
Sure. So there's a notice of violation and they have an opportunity to bring it into compliance. If it's still not in compliance by, I forget what their time frame is.
30 days.
30 days, then they agenda it for a special magistrate hearing. Our special magistrate here is an attorney named Ron Brown, and he works through the docket of all the code violations. And he usually gives them an opportunity, sometimes as much as 120 days, to bring the property into compliance. If they fail to do so, a lien goes on the property. And that is part of the Blight to Bright initiative that the city's been undertaking. I have filed multiple foreclosures on any lien that is not homesteaded within the city of Palaca, moving forward with those foreclosures, many in the historic.
So a
district.
lien in what amount of dollar
It
amount?
accumulates on a per diem basis. It's usually $25 per violation. We've got liens, some of them are over $400,000.
$25
Well,
Per violation.
per day?
Per violation.
Per day.
Per day per violation.
And so
But
if,
of course, the thing to remember is that the city doesn't necessarily want the property, they just want the property to come into compliance.
right. And so per day, so it's been 100 days just for easy math. That's $2,500. And then it's 200 days and it's a year, it's 2 years. So it's $25. Is there a point where they ever have to pay or only when they sell?
When they sell or when I bring a foreclosure action.
Okay. So maybe they could pay that with their tax bill. Here's your tax bill and here's your You're lean.
Yeah, I think this might be something else that is completely out of our realm. However, having said that, I have been for some time, attending the special magistrates meetings. If, I don't believe it would be a problem because they are publicly noticed if another board member were to come to a special magistrate meeting just to kind of get an understanding of the whole thing. Mr.
We
Brown is,
Strongly encourage it, and if you can't come in person,
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
all available on YouTube.
But you can't speak during.
Yeah. But it is eye-opening. Another thing that I found out, which surprised me frankly, is that there are homes in Palaca which have been sorely in need of help and attention for years, that the homeowners were not able to get anyone to, for lack of a better word, take them seriously and help them with these issues. When, you know, when they are then under code enforcement, you know, now they've got violations. There have been cases when they have been able to get the help that they need because of it. And, you know,
When it's a homestead, the original TIF money that we got years ago was to address the code enforcement issues first.
it did.
And those were the first people that got the money, and then it went by how much money you made,
Right.
the least amount, all the way up till it got even. But I thought that was really a good program because it did address that and get those areas done, but I think it's changed now.
Yeah, that particular program hasn't been offered in some time.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
shame.
It hasn't, but we do have a new grant available, and ends in September. You can find information on the city's website, but it's a grant building, for building improvements. And if you want to contact Jade Bags here at the city, it's a matching grant, so you need to provide some of the funds, but.
The
that's
Putnam County also has one, has some sort of program because my neighbor, I thought it was through the tip, but it wasn't. It's a public, Putnam County. I have a-
Chip,
Yeah, SHIP program.
One other question here. So if a property is in the north or south historic district and they've gone through the process and they're doing the work, is there a system of checking back with them? Did they really do? Or did they put something on the back of the house? Is there any, you know, checking?
And again, I would
is it
say that in going to the magistrates meetings, there's always an update given by the,
Well, that's that other topic. I'm switching topics, I guess,
Oh.
again. Well, I was driving around today before I came here and so,
okay, so new topic. From now on, you have to state your topic
Okay.
before you pose your question.
all right, new topic.
Okay.
I went by the
Is this gonna be
house-
going back to when we approve something and we ask them to, like,
yeah.
within
the
so many months?
Mellon
like-
House. So they're doing work on the Mellon House I see today, driving by. And so that made me think, oh, are they tearing that off? Or are they fixing the roof? I wasn't quite sure, so I stopped and watched for a while. It looked to me like they were repairing the roof. If we don't watch, they could, you know, in that case, they could do something that was not approved by the board. So is there a system in place? Whether
Would-
that's,
Wouldn't that be caught by the
Well, if there is a
building
building,
official? Yeah.
if there has been a building permit to do that work, then the
Okay.
county will inspect. They
okay,
get regular inspections, you know.
And that was a question I had during one of our meetings, for instance, like the gate at one of the properties, they had a metal gate up and
uh-huh.
we asked them, that's fine to have temporarily until you get your new gate, we give you a limitation of 3 months. But when I asked the question, do we have anybody to follow up with it?
Right.
The answer was no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't, the city doesn't have that staffing to go and make sure they check everything. And then I also asked if they could just come back to us after 3 months and give us an update. And that too, I don't think was plausible.
We are limited with resources. It's
Yeah.
just a reality we're gonna have to contend with. I can give you a brief update on Mellon House. Their lien was $144,000. We filed a foreclosure action back in November. We're having a settlement meeting on July 17th. It's internal with lawyers. But they have new violations that they've been noticed on for that particular property as well.
All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Mm.
Much appreciated. Thank you, board members, for taking time out of your day and leaving your job. Anything else to come before us? Otherwise, I'd be looking for a motion to
No, I
adjourn.
just want to say thank you. I like being able to have a discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you very
this is good.
much.
Absolutely.
This is very, very helpful and it does eliminate the length of our regular board meetings, because I know we do get into some conversations at the end. And it just kind of snowballs. So I do like these workshops and
It does.
I would like to have them often.
Don't forget to please leave the binder, but that doesn't mean that you cannot
Yes.
remove pages.
Thank you very much.
All those wonderful pages in the back with all sorts of information. Let's take
Yeah.
those home with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, take the pages, but not the binder.
Got to leave the binder. Yeah, you'll be frisked on the way out, but you can take whatever you want in the way of paper.
When is the next magistrate meeting?
Third Tuesday of the month.
The third Tuesday?
1:30.
I have my finger on the
Fourth
button.
Thought the meeting was adjourned.
Well, now it is. And we are adjourned.
Fourth.
Sorry about that. And by the way,